The budget anamorphic lens scene is changing rapidly thanks in part to two companies that are releasing a whole bunch of anamorphic lenses for budget filmmakers. One of those is GreatJoy, and I've reviewed a couple of their lenses on this channel. Today I am looking at this 35mm T2.9 1.8X anamorphic, and it's probably their best one yet. Mine came in a padded white box. Inside there is a lens, a couple of lens caps, a pouch, and some base plate adapters. The lens that I got was a Canon mount, but GreatJoy sent me an EOS to E-mount adapter, and as this is a manual lens, the mount that you get it in doesn't really matter that much. The lens is a thing of beauty, very heavy at just over 3 pounds, but it's surprisingly compact for being a 35mm anamorphic and 1.8X. I was expecting it to be much larger. Regardless, on my A7C, it still makes for a large looking camera and lens setup, and about 80% of the weight of this setup is the lens. Okay, so around the rear there is not much to see. If I remove the mount converter, there is a protruding rectangular lens element here, no electronic connections, and a lot of screws holding all of this together. The first ring is the aperture, which rotates smoothly from T2.9 to T22 and is labeled on the left and right sides of the lens. The movement is nice, it feels well damped with even resistance. Next up is the focus ring, which moves from 0.7 meters to infinity and is light to rotate, but very smooth and even through the rotation. No stickiness or uneven feel to the rotation, so that is a good thing. Like the aperture, this focus ring is labeled on both sides, but unlike older models, now the right side shows measurements in feet and inches, which is a nice touch. 35mm T2.9 anamorphic text on the side here, and a nice GreatJoy logo on the other side. Around the front, it is simple and clean, large front lens element, no text. Inside, there are 18 elements in 14 groups and an 11-bladed diaphragm. From a build quality standpoint, this lens is about as solid as it gets. It doesn't feel like any part of this is plastic, it's all metal and glass. But that's not all that makes a good anamorphic lens, because it has to perform. So here are some samples taken from my A7C and this lens, and these are heavily edited, heavily processed images or videos that should give you some idea of what is possible with this lens. I am by no means a professional, but let's take a look. Alright, so this is by far the best anamorphic lens that GreatJoy has created up until this point. I've reviewed maybe 3 or 4 of them on this channel, and they all had some issues here or there, small things. This one feels like it's well put together, well thought out, and has sorted out a lot of the minor annoyances of previous models. When it comes to anamorphic, there are 3 things that we are going to evaluate: the aspect ratio, the flare performance, and the bokeh. In terms of aspect ratio, this is what you get with this lens without any corrections. You can see here that there is a significant vignette with a 1.8x constant squeeze ratio, which is a big improvement over older lenses that would change their squeeze ratio depending on where you were focused. Now, what happens with an anamorphic lens is that you take a very wide image, you squeeze it into a sensor, and you record it that way, and then when you de-squeeze it in post, you get a nice very wide shot at full resolution with natural black bars on top and bottom. As a result of this 1.8x squeeze factor, this 35mm lens is really equivalent to about a 21mm full frame wide angle lens in terms of what it gathers side to side. For example, here is a photo with my Sigma 20mm full frame lens, and here is the Greyjoy. You can see that they are almost identical in the field of view in terms of width. Anyway, going back to the 32 by 24mm image circle, what this means is that even with vignetting, when you are shooting full frame, you can get a 2.4:1 aspect ratio without any vignetting just by cropping. So this is good news, as most people trying to use this lens for cinematic video will be chasing that 2.4:1 look. Next up is flare performance, or flare rendering, and this one is interesting because it's been all over the place in terms of other Greyjoy models. With this lens, they advertise a clean image with little to no lens flare, and indeed you do get some lens flare, but it isn't much. It's not like some other lenses with blue streaks all throughout the frame. There is a little bit of horizontal flare, but there isn't a large amount. That is, it's not going to distract from your scene if that's the style that you are looking for. And last up, bokeh performance. Now with anamorphic lenses, we are looking for those long, skinny, oval bokeh balls. You do get slight ovals with this lens, but the problem is with a very wide angle lens, you don't get large enough bokeh balls like you do with a 50mm or an 85mm. But overall, I have to say, for a wide angle anamorphic lens, the bokeh balls are oval in shape, and the bokeh overall looks great. It's not distracting. Beyond that, this lens is nice and sharp, which is not necessarily something that's important, but something that I wanted to mention. Also, the focus ring is excellent, very smooth, very nice to use. And in terms of focus, Greyjoy has emphasized that this particular lens, they've paid special attention to the focus breathing. And I'm happy to report that there is little focus breathing when you are racking focus with this 35mm lens. So this lens is launching today on Indiegogo, and I think it's going to be a popular one. It's a solidly built, great performer. The thing that makes this lens unique is the very controlled flaring and the very wide 1.8x squeeze. This lens joins Greyjoy's existing 50 and 60mm lenses, so they are starting to build up a little collection. As for pricing, it's going to be right at $1,600 US or so, with a nice 15% off at launch. So if you are wanting to get one, take advantage of that. Link will be down below. So thank you guys for watching, and thank you to Greyjoy for making these awesome budget anamorphic lenses for aspiring filmmakers out there. I know that they are already working on an 85mm, which I am super duper excited for. That's going to be a great focal length. And I think between this 35 and that new 85mm, you could have an ideal 2-lens setup for budget filmmaking in anamorphic style. So let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section below. As always, thank you so much for all of your comments, all of your likes, and your support. Stay tuned for more, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.